Now 250,000. Now I'm going to get 275. High, I'm going to get 275. 3. Now 300,000. Now 3 1/4, 325. High, I'm going to get 3 1/4, I'm going to get 325. Now half. Now I'm going to get 300,000. And welcome to another edition of the Mike McGavel Jones Show. And we're broadcasting from Lincoln Center in North Dallas, right off the LBJ Freeway and the North Dallas Tollway, or North Dallas Tollway, North Dallas. You know what? It's always hard to remember how that goes. But anyway, I think it's, what is it, Zach?
LBJ and the 635 and LBJ. Who am I kidding? It's not that hard to remember,
not
right?
635 and LBJ.
No?
No, it's you're at 635 LBJ and the Dallas North Tollway.
All right. Well, you know better than me.
Evidently.
Yeah. I'm the one running the studio, but you know how this works. So who am I kidding?
I know. Well, we got lots to talk about today.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you need me, I'll be right here. So anyway, we had a great show last week, and a lot of things were going on, a lot of national history and things of that nature. This week, I am thrilled to have on the show Brenda Cole, who is the managing broker and one of the owners of our United DFW real estate office in Grapevine and South Lake, and that covers that entire area. They're located on Main Street in old downtown Grapevine. And so, good afternoon, good morning, and what's going on, Brenda?
Good afternoon.
Okay.
Happy to be here.
So, what I want to do right now is I'll just do a real quick kind of overview. You and I have known each other for a long time. We go back to college time at North Texas, which was at the time North Texas State, which is now the University of North Texas. You're a graduate of North Texas. And I always like to start every discussion with a little history on like where you grew up and, you know, where you went to school and that kind of stuff. So just kind of, I know the history, so I'm just going to let you tell kind of your beginnings and then how you got into real estate.
So I'm homegrown, Richland Hills, Texas, born and bred Texan, second generation Texan. I graduated from Richland High School, a proud rebel. And I went to the University of North Texas, as you say, North Texas State University then, with a major in interpersonal and public communications. Graduated there, took a little turn into the advertising public relations, which is what I really thought I wanted to do at the time. Worked for Pier 1 Imports in-house advertising agency. Later found out quickly that I needed to be in advertising in downtown Dallas if I was going to go a long way in my career. So I decided to take a job in the air freight industry, air cargo, so I could work nights and interview for jobs during the day. And 4 or 5 years later, I was still at the airport as a sales manager, and just didn't like the industry for me. It wasn't for me. Didn't love my job, and I needed to find something that I loved. And I actually got into real estate, got my license in my late 20s, and have been doing it ever since. So pushing 30 years in the industry, and absolutely love it and wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yep. Of course, when we knew each other, that's when I was starting my company, my business, which was basically a mom-pop top business. And you worked with me. You helped start that business, and were my first actual clerk. And for those who don't know what a clerk is at an auction, that's the person they call them the scribe, or it's the person who keeps track of the amount and the buyer number and all that. So you were doing that, especially when I first got into my bigger sales. My first, in fact, the first really sale of any size was the Turner Hotel in Gainesville. And I was looking at some pictures a while back. I think I showed that to you, where, you know, we're sitting there and we're basically in our 20s and going into early 30s. And so it's just crazy time. It was a crazy time. And so we worked together for about 3 or 4 years. And then as life goes on, I went my way, you went your way, and you just described what you did. So I want to talk about kind of the experience you had in the last 30 years in the business, because I know who did you start with when you first got into the business?
It was actually Prudential Best Texas. That's no longer, hasn't been for 29 years in Keller. Mm-hmm. And then I went to Murray Realtors, which was an acquisition of Coldwell Banker Paula Stringer, which was an acquisition of Coldwell Banker Residential Brokerage and NRT Company. And then from there, I went to a RE/MAX office in Southlake, and then found myself coming back to you saying, I want to talk about this United gig again.
Which is exactly right. So, and I can't tell you exactly what month and year that was. I just remember that Coldwell Banker was looking at doing an auction, and you introduced them to me, which brought us back together to look at things. And then I said, look, of course you were aware that I was with United Country, actually, which was the mothership. And then we had started United Real Estate, and which was really a pretty good fit for you, which I felt like was a good fit for you. And then that's how we introduced that. Of course, you're the managing broker for Grapevine, which is DFW. Then you also have involvement in United Country Fort Worth. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So are you the managing broker for that?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So basically you can do the urban real estate. Of course, you have a group of realtors and agents that work under you. And then you also have the relationship with Fort Worth, and which goes way back. I mean, it's really your hometown if you really get down to it.
Right.
But that also gives you the ability to tap into the rural market with United Country, which is the largest land company in the United States. So you have just moved your office to Main Street in Grapevine. Tell me about your office in Grapevine.
Well, we really wanted to have a landmark location that people knew when we said downtown historic Grapevine, the Christmas capital of Texas. People knew where that was, as opposed to some building on South Lake Boulevard. So we looked and looked, and my business partner and I finally found this prime location on Main Street in Grapevine. The history, the historical nature of it, it's just a great fit for me. I'm very comfortable in boots and jeans, and a little more casual atmosphere, and that's exactly what Grapevine offers. We were just there Thursday night for the Parade of Lights. We had our agents with their children, even in the rain. We had umbrellas out for them, and it was just becoming a part of the community. There's very few small towns left around northeast Tarrant County, and Grapevine really offers that. So we are smack dab on Main Street, next to Will Hoyt's, across from Tolbert's, right in the mix of the heart of downtown Main Street.
It's a great spot. And lots of people. There's a lot of foot traffic, which you don't see hardly anywhere anymore. Foot traffic, except in a small town. And even though Grapevine is no longer a small town, it feels like a small town. And then you have your partner, who I've known for a long time, and he actually came to our auction school so he could get his license. I have known him for probably 30 years. So tell me about your partner. Tell me about his other business, which also is attracted to that office location as well.
So when I looked at United for the second time, and the timing was right for me, and Mike said, well, good, because I now have somebody I think that will work perfect with you. He said he thinks we would complement each other, and he introduced me to Andy Gabehart. And it was a perfect match. We just get along beautifully. He says, what do you need and how can I help you? Real estate is your specialty. You go work. Let me know what you need. So when we were looking at locations in Grapevine, I couldn't find anything small enough for me. And we just kind of had this conversation that started about co-workspace. Could we combine our two companies together? He owns OIG, Office Interior Groups, and they do everything from a new chair that someone needs for their office to totally moving offices, moving facilities, setting up partitions, conference rooms, every single piece of furniture needed. They have designers who design for the space, and he just has an incredible head for making those things happen, putting it on paper and making it happen. He has designers and a few salespeople and an office manager, and we talked about how many people are in the office day to day for real estate, and if they're in the office a lot, they're not working. So they're out and about and working in their cars. And so we talked about, could we combine these offices together and share the space? And we took that building down to the walls, 4 walls, and we the only walls in are glass office walls for conference rooms and our space. And it's just a very modern, a combination of antiques and the original brick walls from the old Will Hoyt Tire and Home Store, to concrete floors with beautiful granite countertops and stainless steel appliances.
Do you know how old the building is?
I do not, and I should.
It's an old building, and you mentioned the previous company that was located there, but this goes back to the historic times, probably the 20s and 30s at least, and for sure the 40s and 50s. But they have gone back to the ceilings, to the original wood, and it has that historic feel. And of course, that whole stretch does. And Andy is an entrepreneur by nature. He is a serial entrepreneur.
Oh, it's one of his many companies. He has. He dabbles in many things.
How I met him 30 years ago was competing with him on auctions, because he and I were both doing office furniture here in Dallas. This goes back, back to the 80s for sure, and then in the 90s. And there was a lot. Of course, we've both gone through multiple financial cycles where you have, great times and the times are perfect, and then you go through a period where you're liquidating trust companies and mortgage companies and title companies, and so he and I would both do one of two things. We would go in and buy everything in the building and then move it, and then have to sell it. And so that was before online auctions. It was all live auctions or traditional brokerage. And then over time, he got into the online auctions. He has an online platform for the sales that he does, but he's very active in the marketplace. He's he has his box at American Airlines, and you've got a great partner there, and so we give him his shout out for the things that he does and the offices that y'all are running. Let's get into talking about auctions. And I know that you have someone in your office that you work with on a regular basis, and you see him, and I guess he's an integral part of your office, and that would be Steve Hobson, who went through our auction school several years ago. Tell me how you, as a managing broker of a traditional real estate office, how do you describe what auctions bring to the table, I think?
So having the United Country office, I have 6 agents there, and 2 of those are auctioneers. And Steve Hobson and Kyle Dykes are my auctioneers in the Fort Worth office. I have a little different spin because I did grow up in auction, helping you in those early years, that I get it. I understand it. I get the excitement. To this day in fundraisers, I'll pay stupid money for something because it's in the auction environment. So I had that knowledge, so I didn't have to be taught the auction side. I had to be taught what auction had to do with real estate and how could that work. We've gone through some market times where you put a sign in the yard and 24 hours later you have 15 offers and you're working multiple offers for the seller. And so as you and I talked more and more about it, I thought, well, that's kind of a silent auction right there. And the other bidders don't know what each other's paying. And quite frankly, sometimes we could probably get more for the house if they knew what that was. So as I continued to think about it and try and work it into my business, it took Steve, an auctioneer who was able to come to the meetings, talk with the agents, explain it to them, before they just heard it from him, and it was a different perspective. And since then, we've had several auctions that have been brought in by our United Real Estate agents in the DFW office. And we've actually closed, we just closed one in October. And it's not every property. It's unique properties, different properties. The seller's position makes a difference. We had one that was just simply deferred maintenance, that since 1988, nothing had been done to the property. It had a little bit of damage to some structurally, not major, but enough that just going on the market traditional was probably not the right fit, and beautifully went incredibly well, and we got much more for it than the seller ever expected. The last one we did had some maintenance issues and a little more structural issues, and we knew it was going to be investment. And it was a tough one. It really was. And we were able to get that one sold for also more than what the seller had accepted. So once you see those and you start realizing, let me look at this property I have, it allows my agents to have one more tool. They never have to say no to a property. There is something that United or United Country can offer to be able to assist our clients.
So, of course, and I know, I've known your family forever and have history there. So when you're looking at what is a good fit for an auction, let's talk about what a good fit is. As I've gone into this thing, it's been multiple levels. Either the seller wants to move it quick. It's time. It's all about time and money. The second thing is deferred maintenance, where they simply do not have the funds to do the repairs, or don't want to, or do not want to list traditionally and have to deal with inspections, because you know how inspections work. That can kill a deal, or it can get so contentious in the negotiation that everybody throws their hands up and walks away. Divorce is a big one. Anytime that you have two parties that don't agree on much, one of the best ways to take it to auction, because it's not slanted one way or the other. It's an independent sale. You've got a third party, and it's open for bids, and whatever the high bid is, then it's going to sell. Sometimes one of the parties, the husband or the wife, they also have the option to buy the property, and an auction is about the only way to do it fairly. And then also a dissolution of a business enterprise where you have partners that are getting a divorce, which that happens. And then the other thing that I think is a great auction opportunity is when you have elderly people who either need to size down or are forced by age, or in some cases Alzheimer's, or whatever that is. It has to happen. And the family lives in California, and the other brother lives in New York, and one in Florida, and they all left. And then they come together and say, look, we're not coming back. We don't want to live there. It's too far away for us to manage as a rental property. We need to sell it, and we need to sell it now.
And maintenance on those properties is very difficult. And the longer they go unmaintained with no one living in them, every 30 days, you run the risk of water issues, foundation issues, different things. So that's a vacant property is also a good candidate for it. Any property that might take a while to sell, that needs additional advertising, the auction side of that does that. It certainly gets out to a large base, whether it's farm, ranch, a house on acreage. We did one that we were able to sell the personal property on the same day as the farm. So we had the personal property sale of the tractors, the trailers, everything that they had, because they were retiring before we had stopped for a break for the actual ranch itself.
How important do you believe it is to be able to do a turnkey sale? Because, as you know, there's a host of individuals that simply do not want to. They don't want to have a tag sale. They don't want to have a garage sale, which to me, they're just ugly words, because it's, you see these people tagging plates and stuff and trying to get $1 or 50 cents or 25 cents, whereas they could have an auction, get it knocked out in 4 or 5 hours, offer the real estate, have the potential of having multiple individuals bidding on it at the same time.
Well, when you have 50 to 100 people, one box of stuff may mean nothing to most people, but one person sees a piece of something in it that they want. So you just really open the opportunity for people to start battling over one thing, and it becomes an ego issue in some cases. I'm getting it. I know it's worth less than that, but I want that piece. Mm-hmm. And to have this one that we did in the day, quite frankly, was 9 a.m. to about 2 p.m., and we liquidated everything. They even started pulling stuff out of the house that wasn't going to be in the sale that was like, oh, wait, this is going to be gone in 2 days. And so they started bringing additional things out. But it's such a great alternative for the right person, for the right opportunity, that traditional real estate agents just, they don't have access to it, and quite frankly, they don't understand it. And it's an educational point that we do. Steve and I have talked to other real estate companies about doing properties for them, and have been very successful with educating them and having them call us and say, hey, maybe I have another one for you. Mm-hmm. We've said no to some that just weren't right.
Yep.
Because not every property is.
So there's a qualifying process on every piece of real estate that goes to auction, and we'll talk about that. So when you're qualifying a property, you know, my first thing is the seller realistic about the value? Where did they come up with the perceived value? Where, you know, you say, well, you know, what do you think your property is worth? We're not always the first person they've talked to. They've already talked to 2 or 3 people. And so, you know, in some cases, they'll say, oh, it's definitely worth $300,000. And you're, okay, what are you basing that on? Because we have access to data and information. We can go back in and look at previous sales. We can look at, you know, as an agent or a broker, we have the ability to do our job, which is to do the research and find out what's that property really worth. And, you know, yeah, if it was perfect, if it was in pristine condition, if it was a new build or whatever. But then when you go in there and start looking, and you've got a home in Colleyville, and they're saying it's worth $500,000, but all your research says it's worth $350,000, that's when you have to have the hard conversation. And then you say, why are you telling me what? You have to be thoughtful about it and empathetic, because they may owe $400,000. That's the problem.
Yes.
They're telling me it's worth $500,000. All of our records indicate that it's worth $300,000, and they owe $350,000 to $400,000. So, you know, I've always said we're not attorneys, but we understand the law. We're not psychologists, but we have to be able to work with people on a one-on-one and be very cognizant of their emotions and their feelings. And that property, it's like the property where your folks lived. Mm-hmm. That property has more meaning to you than anybody else ever, because everything that happened to you when you were young, and even now, you still have that property. Well, you, in your mind, it's at you will always go with the peak of the market. Even if we're in a recession, you're going to go, well, I know that property is worth this because I'm paying the taxes, you know. However, you know, in 2 or 3 years, we may be in a different financial situation in the United States, and all indicators based on my conversations with people last week, now is the time to sell properties. Yep. If you're thinking about selling, you need to be thinking now, because all the predictors that we're looking at, all the trends that we're looking at, all the things that are indicators in our profession and also in financial advisors, it's telling us we have about 24 months, 24 to 36. This rodeo is not going to keep going. We've been in the peak of the market now for the last 3 years, 4 years. In fact, we've already slowed down. You know, we were kicking it hard 5 years ago as we were coming out of the Great Recession, and people made a lot of money if they're buying it right, and they're going to make good money now. But people need to get real. And let me tell you, when the downturn comes, and I've been through 4 of them, and when the downturn comes, and the banks tighten up and the mortgage companies tighten up, everybody's going to be crying and saying, hey, I wish I'd have done it then.
Yeah, it's not a fun time in real estate. For those of us who've been around a while, we ride the ups and we ride the downs, and we do owe it to our clients to help them understand you are buying at the peak of the market. But if they've wanted a house in the last 2 years, anything under $750 in the Northeast Tarrant County area, totally different in the Dallas market. But then they had to.
It's happening here now too.
They had to pay over the list price, and it will be, depending on what our downturn is, it will be difficult. But Sellers behave like sellers, and they always think their property is worth more than it is, most of the time.
Most of them.
They believe it's worth more than it is. It's our job to help show them data that proves otherwise. If they think it's worth 500 and they owe 400, it's probably not an auction candidate.
Yep.
Well, if it's worth 350, it's sure not. We've stumbled once in the auction process, and it certainly taught us better qualifying questions to ask those clients.
It's all about qualifying. So the first indicator is what we just talked about, is understanding what the seller's situation is. And then also, do they have any equity? Right. If they've got
Huge.
equity, that's great. And if they don't have equity, look, let's say the house, they think it's worth 500. It's probably worth 300. We can get them to 50. So they're going to come up short $50,000. And the question begs, can you sell that house? Yeah, you can sell it. But they're going to have to kick and pony in $50,000 or $60,000 to close it and get it done. So people need to understand, just because you owe $400,000 doesn't mean we can't sell it for $300,000 if that's what the market bears. If that's the market, that's the market. We don't make the market. We deal with market conditions. And so at that price, I just want people to understand is we're going to be very direct about it. We're going to tell you what we think, and then you have to make an educated decision based on your research, your own research, because sellers today, as you well know, and buyers are smarter now than they ever have been. So anyway, qualifying the properties. Go ahead.
Well, even in that particular instance, it's still better for the seller, even if they're having to bring money, with the auction method costing that seller less money in the long run. So even if they are going to have to bring money to closing, it still works out from an auction perspective.
If we do go into, and I'm not guaranteeing anything because I don't ever guarantee anything. All I'm going to tell you is that we have market trends and we can see what's happening. And we're looking at the stock market, which Friday closed down, not in a good way. And a lot of this is politically driven. That's the other thing.
Absolutely.
And that's why it's so imperative that we understand the political process. Who's in office? What are they trying to do? Who are they trying to please? Because, I saw today they interviewed the gentlemen that were behind getting us out of this last recession. Bernanke being one. What was the other two? Gosh, I had it on. I can see it in my mind.
Greenspan.
No, not Greenspan. Paulson, and then also Tim, and I it's slipping my mind right now. But he's the guy that we had at the Fed, I believe. Anyway, those three guys were pretty much charged with fixing the bank situation and making sure that Lynch didn't go down. And so that they've evidently made an HBO movie about this, and it's getting ready to come out right now. And it's interesting because you always see these guys. They're always so their decorum is so straight-laced, and they don't give away anything with facial expressions. They're great actors, quite frankly, as they're sitting there they're testifying before the banking groups and all that, and talking about why are you doing this, but in this documentary that HBO's coming out with, they're very direct. And Paulson says, hey, look, I had nightmares. I'd wake up in the middle of the night because they were scared. Yeah. They weren't sure of what they were doing. They were making the best decisions they could, but they weren't guaranteeing the results. And they were just afraid that they would take the whole system down. And so in retrospect, and in fact, Paulson said at one point, it wasn't very American because they didn't let some of the big banks go down, and little guys suffered. And they did take some others down. But I hearken this back to the early 90s when I was working with the Resolution Trust Corporation when Reagan pulled the plug on the savings and loans. I was front and center. We did it. We sold those properties. And I literally could write a book about what happened during the RTC and the FDIC when we were closing banks and selling assets. And they were calling notes. And hell, they were calling everybody's notes, including my own. And so I know how that feels.
Murray Realtors, when I was with them, was actually owned by the RTC, which was quite a scary place for a real estate office to be, but because they were a part of Murray Savings and Loan and Murray Travel and all of that. So we did see all of that. The good thing about Dallas-Fort Worth is that we never had the high climbs, the high appreciation and values. We have been slow and steady, frustratingly slow and steady sometimes for people who want to sell their houses quickly and make money. But we have been at such a very deliberate, slow process that even our down markets are not like California and Florida and other places. We just never had those highs to drop down from. So we're still healthy enough that even if we have the downturns,
there's still enough demand in this marketplace. We're still going to be able to sell the properties.
With every company trying to get into the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
And you, of course, you're very aware that the PGA just announced that they're moving to Frisco, and they're going to build an Omni Hotel, and they're going to put in 2 golf courses. Now, who in the world would have thought that the PGA would ever leave Florida to come to North Texas? But it's a $500 million project. I mean, it's a big deal. You build a hotel and add 2 golf courses off of the Dallas North Tollway.
Good job.
Pretty miraculous. So, all right, let's get back because we've only got about 5 minutes. Qualifying the property. You're qualifying the seller. You're qualifying the property. Do they have funds to invest in marketing? That's important because we don't typically invest in the marketing unless there's some unusual circumstance. And I'm not saying that I never have, because I have, but it's by far unusual, especially in the numbers that we deal with, or at least the ones I deal with. What else would be a qualifier for you? Is there anything else? I'm trying to make sure I don't forget something. I think sense of time matters.
Their time frame. What are they looking for? Do they need to be out? The great part of auction, one of the benefits is, as you'd mentioned, with no inspections, so all of that has to be done up front.
Non-contingent.
We will take financing, sellers will, but it's not contingent upon that, so they already have to be through that process. If it doesn't appraise, they still move forward. So there's just so many benefits on that end of the auction side that timing is, if it's important to the seller, from a time of contract, usually 2 weeks for a cash buyer and 3 weeks for a mortgage, compared to 3 weeks to 45 days on the traditional market.
So for the seller, the benefit is speed and closing based on their time constraints. For the buyer, they get to pay their price if it's accepted, but they're taking it in the condition it's in. So really, it's a kind of even back and forth. They're both benefiting and they're both getting what they want, but there's factors.
It's the market that investors have been in for years. Investors don't have inspections done. They know. They come in with cash. They know the property. They know they're willing to roll the risk of the as-is, and they've been doing that for years. So it's somewhat just getting the rest of the consumers more educated on it.
Okay. So before I close out, give your contact information if anybody would like to talk to you directly and send you an email or a phone number.
So my email address is Brenda Cole, DFW, BrendaCole, DFW, as in Dallas-Fort Worth, at gmail.com. My cell or text is 817-360-8499. You can find me at 430 South Main Street in Grapevine at United Real Estate DFW Properties. The websites, Facebook, United Real Estate DFW Properties, or United Country Real Estate Fort Worth. You can find us on any of those.
And so if a major project comes along, of course, you would be certainly welcome to work with United-SCS, and that's www.united-scs.com, and that stands for United Strategic Client Services, which I'm the president of. And of course, I'm all about United brand. So whether you're interested in a country property, you can certainly call me about that. And if you're interested in urban properties, you can do that. Whether you're selling or buying, I'll either handle it myself or I'll send it to Brenda. Brenda's been very involved with everything that's happened here in the last few years. She actually helped me buy my house in the peak of the market, I might add. And I have no regrets about that because I knew what I was getting, and I wanted the property, and I wanted it now. It had not been previously available, and the seller said, yes, we're going to sell it. And I go, okay, well, let's try to make something happen. And that's a good thing. And at the same time, we've shown some properties together. We had the opportunity to meet Laura Bush here not too long ago on a property that we showed. That was very cool. And this is an exciting business. You never know who you're going to meet. And you help me with fundraisers all the time here in Dallas, all types of auctions. And so I'm thrilled that you're with United on both sides of the business. And I know hopefully this is your career till the end.
My last stop.
That's the last stop, as well as mine. So as we wrap this thing up, if you need to get a hold of me, you can find me at mike@united-scs.com or call me at 214-906-5265. And Zach, that's all we got, buddy.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
Brenda. And we'll see you next time on the Mike McGavel Jones Show here in Dallas, Texas. And have a great week, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. God bless. See ya.